All right, so let's talk about Google Forms and how you make a Google form and what it's for. So first of all, in your Google Drive, wherever you want to make this form, you just click on New, go down to More, and you have Google Forms as an option. Now, Google Forms is a great tool for gathering information, analyzing data, giving a quiz to students or anybody for any kind of training. So we're going to look at it in both aspects, kind of from a survey aspect and a quiz aspect. Our first objective is just, how do we get around Google Forms and how do we change some of the main settings? I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, so I just want you to see where they are. So let's start with the title of your form. So you want to name your form in two places. So I'm going to pretend that I'm making a form to gather, let's say, a t-shirt sign up. So I'm going to name my form here. And then up here in the top left corner, I have to click on Untitled Form for it to name my actual file. So you'll want to put it both places. They can be different, but it's really nice to kind of make them the same so they're consistent across the form. If you'd like a form description, you can list that here. Now, all of your settings for the form are in the top right corner. You have add-ons, which we're not going to talk about in this lesson. We have a color palette, which is where we can change the color of our form. You can also go here, click on the little picture, and there are a lot of different illustrations that you can choose from that will affect the theme of your form. That's about the only color options that you have with this form, so take your time picking your theme. We'll come back to this button here, but we're going to go over to our settings. Now there are settings here, and there are settings in these three little dots on the right-hand side. So sometimes you may find the settings in one place, sometimes you may find them over here, and if your screen is smaller, sometimes not all of these buttons appear at the top. They'll be in your three little dots and under these options here. So we're going to go into our settings, take a quick look. Now, there are a couple different things that you can do on any form that you create. Number one is collect email addresses. This makes sure that the person logs in and it collects their email address with the form. This is great if you need email addresses in your data at the end. But it's not necessary. You can just include a question that collects email addresses. You can restrict your form to people in your domain. So for us, we can restrict it to just Murray Independent people. You'll see right here, as soon as I click that, that means they're going to have to sign into Google to do this form. So think about your audience and who's going to be completing the form. Is that something you want them to do? Even if it's just for Murray people, sometimes making them sign in is a little excessive. So you may or may not want to turn this on. Now, the other option here that requires people to sign in is if you limit them to one response. So I want to make sure they don't fill this out 3 times, then they will be required to sign in. So those are all things you can turn on and off. You can make sure that they can edit it after they submit their form. This is another, they'll also have to be signed in for that. And then if you're taking a quick survey and you want them to see the results of the survey, you can turn this on and everyone who finishes the survey will see the results. Usually we don't have this on, but that's something you may want to do if you're doing something with a group. We have a couple more options up here at the top. Presentation. You can show a progress bar at the bottom of the form so that people can see how far they've gotten. You can shuffle the questions. And you can show a link to submit another response. So if people are going to be filling this out multiple times, that brings another link up for them to click. You may or may not want any of these things on. And then at the very end, if you would like to give them a special message, thank you for completing the form, you can do that and it will show up at the end. We'll come back in a minute to the quizzes. Now, basically all of your buttons up here at the top are settings and information and things you can kind of add. On the right hand side, these are all things you can insert. So that'll bring us to our next objective. Let's talk about adding questions to your quiz or your survey. Your quiz will start with one question already in. So let's talk about just editing that one question before we add any more. We have lots of different question types on the right that we can choose from. When you choose a question type, your options on the left will change. So for instance, a lot of times you want to start your quiz with first name, last name. So that's going to be a short answer question. This text here feels like you can click in it, but that's actually where people are going to enter their answer, and that's just giving you a little preview. So now let's add a different question. I'm going to hit the plus sign on the right, and it will add it after my first question, and I'm going to do a question for last name. And you'll notice as soon as I finish typing it, it changes my question type to short answer because Google is kind of guessing what you want. Now, I can also add other types of questions, multiple choice, checkbox, drop down, and all of these other choices that you see here. So you can play with those choices, see what they offer you. But one of the great things about adding questions here is you can have as many options as you want, including an other. So for instance, I'm going to ask, what is your t-shirt size? And I'm going to give a variety of options. But before I even get to that point, Google suggests for me several options to include. If I like all of these options, I can include them all. Now what if someone has another size that's not listed here? I can choose Add Other, and an Other box will appear, and if someone wants to type in a different response, they can do that. So that's a really great way. You can also copy and paste a series of responses. So if you already have a quiz made and you have 4 choices, copy them from your document, click Paste right here, and it will split them all up. It's really, really handy. On each of these questions, you can also add a picture, or you can delete any of the choices by clicking the X on the right-hand side. Finally, you can make questions required by clicking this little required toggle at the bottom. This will make sure that people have to complete the question before submitting their quiz or their survey. Now the last 2 buttons you see at the bottom are to duplicate the question or to trash it. So if you've decided you don't need this question, you can hit the trash can, it will remove it. If you want to make a copy of it and then just slightly change the question, it saves you a little bit from redoing all of your work. And that's how you add questions. All right, so let's talk about making your Google form into a quiz. So we actually want questions to be graded. We want there to be a right or wrong answer. So let's say the right answer to this t-shirt question is medium. So there's nowhere for me to make this a correct answer. I actually have to turn this into a quiz. So we're going to go back into our settings. We're going to click on quizzes, and we're going to say make this a quiz. Now I get a whole slew of other choices here now that I can make sure people see at the end what questions they missed, what the correct answers are, what the point values are, and I can also make sure that they get their grade right after they submit it. You may or may not want to do this. You can also have it later so that you can tell them, okay, the test is graded, and then you send them all their answers at once. Especially if you're giving this to a class, you don't want your first period to see all the correct answers, and by 7th period your kids are getting them all right. So you'll want to make sure some of this is on and some of it's off. So we'll turn this into a quiz. As soon as I do that, every one of my questions gets an answer key. And when I click on answer key, I'm able to choose the correct answer and choose how many points that correct answer is worth. Now on a multiple choice question, there's 1 correct answer. On a short answer question, I can actually put in how many correct answers I want there to be. So if the correct answer is John, I might write it 3 different ways, or any way that the kids might write that answer. You can make it worth 1 point or more. You can have it automatically mark all other short answer questions incorrect. So if anybody puts any other name than this, they automatically get it wrong, and you would have to go in and fix it if that was incorrect. Or you can just leave this like this. That way it's a question that you grade at the end, and you make sure that all the kids' answers are correct. It'll depend on capitalization, it'll depend on spelling, so this one can be a little tricky. You don't want to use this all the time. It's really great if there's definitely a right answer. It's a 1-word answer, and you can just mark everything else incorrect. So now this is a quiz, and as I go through this, creating this quiz, I can mark certain questions correct or incorrect, and give all the point values I need to. So let's take a look at your responses. Once you've made your survey or your quiz, you want to send it out to people, and we'll do that in a second. But after you get your responses back, this is how you look at them. So I'm going to use the task check I gave you guys the first week, and I'm going to click on responses. And because this is a quiz, I see a couple of different things. I see a summary, I see individual, and I see question by question. If it wasn't a quiz, you wouldn't see this middle question option. But if I scroll down, you see I can see great little graphs of how everybody did on the different questions. Because it was a quiz, again, you're seeing the correct answer in green and how many people answered that correctly. If someone answered it incorrectly, you'll see a little bit in gray here. On a short answer, let's scroll down so you can see one of those, you'll see how people typed in their answer. And so both of those would be correct, but one of them is just typed differently than the other. Now that's one way to view your responses. You can also view it student by student or person by person and click through each individual response and see how each person did. If you'd ask kids to put their name at the top of it, you would see each student's by themselves. Then you could easily print out their responses if you needed to, or remove them if they needed to do it again. And by quiz, I can see actually question by question how everybody did on that question and how close we were to being all correct. Now, the other way you can view your responses is to click Create Spreadsheet, and it will create a spreadsheet for you in your Google Drive in the same place this form was that has the responses. This will allow you to sort, filter, and use these responses in any way that you choose. This is a live spreadsheet, so if someone goes and fills out the Google form right now, the next response would just pop into the spreadsheet automatically. Sometimes you need the spreadsheet of responses. Sometimes the summary here is all you need, but you need to know how to do both. So make sure that you know where to find your responses, know how to create a spreadsheet of responses, and then know where that spreadsheet lives. In your Google Drive, wherever the Google form was, the spreadsheet will be attached kind of right to it, and it'll be named the exact same thing and called responses, so it's easy to find. So we finished our form and we're ready to send it to people. First of all, one thing I would recommend that you do is preview your form like a person is going to see it, and that's what this little eyeball up here is for. It is your preview button. Now it says preview, but this is actually your live form. So if you filled this form out right now, it would actually take your responses and submit them. So back on my form, I actually am going to see one response. So although this is a preview button, it is live. So be careful when using that preview button. You can take it just so you can try out the quiz or the survey yourself, but it is a live form, so you will have responses from it. So once you've previewed your form, you've decided it's great, you're ready to send it on, you have a few options. Everything is going to stem from the send button. So click on the send button, and you have 3 ways that you can send this form. The first way is directly to email. So if I'm ready to send this to someone, and I know I just have a couple specific people that need to get this form, I can type in their email addresses, write them a little message, and include the form in the email. This, when they get the email, they will actually open it up and be able to take the form right there. It's very, very handy. The second way to share your Google form or survey is by a link, and this is probably what you'll do the most of the time. So you'll click this second little button here, and it's going to give you a big long link that you can copy and paste and send to people. You can also hit shorten URL, so you can get kind of a user-friendly version of it, but it's still pretty long. So then what you'll do is you'll copy this link. You can go to Google Classroom and paste it there. You can go to a traditional email, type an email to people and say, hey, take my survey, and paste the link there. So that's how you're going to get it to people, and that's the most important part. You can also use a link shortener like bit.ly and type the big long link in, and then let it make a really tiny one for you to write on the board or give to people. So that's how you're sharing your links. You're either going to email or you're going to send it via a link here. There's one more type of sharing that we need to talk about, and that's adding collaborators to work with you on your form. So this is very similar to sharing a document or a folder in Google Drive, but the button's named something different in Google Forms. So what you're going to look for here, you're going to click your 3 little dots, and you're going to click Add Collaborators. This is if you want to add someone else that looks very similar to our sharing box to be able to work on your form and edit it right alongside of you. So this sends them the form, they can make changes to it and work with it and view all the responses. So this is different than I want to send this to someone to fill it out. This is I want to send it to someone to work with me on. So make sure you know how to do both. Send it to people to fill out and send it to people to work with you on.